Hi everybody, welcome back. So in this module, I wanted to go take a look at how to go ahead and get Kubernetes set up in GKE, which is Google Cloud, effectively, managed Kubernetes. Now you can go ahead and set up compute instances and roll your own vanilla Kubernetes implementation, but it's very, very, very easy to go do this within GKE. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over my desktop so you guys can go ahead and take a look at this. And it looks like I got the wrong device here, so let me go switch this over. So I'll stick that down in the corner. All right, cool. So what we want to go ahead and do is basically get in here to the Google Cloud Console, it's console.cloud.google.com. And then what we're going to go do is we're going to go down to the Kubernetes section, and we're going to go click on clusters, right, which is going to do exactly what it sounds like. And then we're going to go basically click on create cluster. So you can do the create, you can do deploy container, you can take the quick start. So, you know, we're basically going to go in and click on create cluster. You can do the quick start if you want to. That's a sort of the even simpler version, but this is super, super easy. We're going to go do a standard cluster, right? So, you know, Autopilot is going to go set up some managed instance groups effectively for you where, you know, these are going to be preemptible. If memory serves. So I'm going to go click on configure here. And then we're going to basically just pick where we want to go ahead and create this. Now for something that is going to be production, what I would want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and select regional. So we go ahead and deploy this to more than one zone in a region for redundancy and high availability. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and do one, and I'm going to go put it in US Central 1A. And yeah, that's kind of it, right? So we can go ahead and say if we want to be, you know, rapid, so we can get new features recently introduced to Kubernetes. We can be regular, or we can go ahead and be stable depending on what our requirements are. Again, this is just for the back end, right? So this is just for Kubernetes itself. So, yeah, I can go click on create. And we're going to be able to see the commands. If you want to go ahead and see the equivalent REST or command line, we can go ahead and click on that. And that will show us the commands to go ahead and set this guy up. You can look through all the various different options and so forth and so on. You can go click on execute in Cloud Shell, but I'm just going to go click on create. So this is going to go take a little while to run. It's going to be deploying our instances, and it's going to be, you know, taking a little while to do it, probably maybe 3-4 minutes or something like that to get it all set up. So not bad. Once we go ahead and have that deployed, we can then start actually doing stuff with it. So we can go look at how to go modify our clusters, and we can also go ahead and maybe add nodes to it or look at storage and things along those lines. So we'll give this a few seconds to kind of finish provisioning, and then we can go ahead and sort of click on the cluster once it's been provisioned. And actually, it might even be able to click on it now. But yeah, we can see that this, in fact, is still deploying. And we can go see the basic information about our cluster. So we can see that this is, again, it might be a little bit small for you guys, but this is the version of GKE that we're using. You can see that this has got 3 nodes. This is the IP address of our endpoint. Don't worry, this is gonna be gone by the time you guys see the video. We can go ahead and look at the maximum number of pods per node, and if we want to go do HTTP load balancing and so forth and so on, right? So this is a nice thing. One thing that you guys might want to do if you're going to be setting up a cluster for testing and just kind of playing around with in Google Cloud is taking advantage of projects. So you can go create projects for different use cases. And one of the nice things that you can go do is you can actually go blow away an entire project, and that blows away all of the resources in that project. So, Kubernetes is great, but it's going to be running multiple instances. And if you forget to go turn this stuff off, or if you leave resources provisioned, whether that's storage or whatever it is, it could end up costing you some money. So if you just want to go play around with a cluster really easily, you could potentially go set something up and then blow it away, and then switch over to something like Docker Desktop to get an understanding of the basic kind of Kubernetes interfaces, or maybe set up a Raspberry Pi Kubernetes cluster, something along those lines. And then when you want to do things that really allow you to get more of an idea of a more enterprise, larger cluster environment, switch back to Google Cloud, spin up a cluster, and then when you're not using it, just blow it away. Right? Make sure that you don't spend too many shekels without without being aware that you're going to go do it. And you can see here it's saying that's going to take about 5 minutes or more to go do this. And I think we're probably at, maybe 3 or 4, something like that. So we might have a little bit more from here. If we go click on nodes, we can go ahead and see the default pool. We can go see the number of nodes that we're running. We can see if auto scaling is turned on or off. And I think actually even at this point, despite the fact, there we go, it's been created successfully. We can see our nodes here listed out. These guys are all ready, and we're good to go. So if we go ahead and look at the default pool, we can go click on default pool. And then if we wanted to, we could actually go edit this and resize it. So you can see, the idea with the pools is we can have more than one pool, either based on geographic location, or we can go ahead and have maybe different size nodes. So if we have some containers that are going to be, taking up significantly more CPU and RAM and resources sort of generally, we can go ahead and have them run on larger compute instances, and then maybe have another pool of nodes that's going to be using smaller instances, and maybe can scale to significantly more. That way we're adding or decreasing capacity in more granular increments for the other types of containers in our environment. So anyway, if I go ahead and click on edit, I think it should give me a resize option here somewhere. And we could potentially go change the number of nodes from 3 to 4, and then just go down here and click save. If I make it a little bit smaller, it might be easier to see the whole thing at once. So that's now saved, and it's basically going to go apply this. So with traditional Kubernetes, you need to go manage the number of instances yourself that are basically the nodes yourself. So you would need to go manually go create a new VM and add it, all that kind of stuff. One of the nice things about working in GKE is it's just going to go do this for you. So we've basically said that we should have 4 nodes. I thought I edited that. Oh, and it's got a spinning wheel, so it's probably looks like it's doing something. So I'm not sure what. Okay, yeah, so it's updating now. So we've got 3 nodes currently, and then we should see the 4th one pop up here. There we go. So now we've got this guy set up, and we can go see the, amount of CPU that we have, how much we can go allocate, how much memory is running on all these guys, all right, and so forth and so on. So, yeah, pretty simple so far. Nothing too crazy. We can also go to the where are we? Go back up here. Go back to our clusters. Close this out. All right. So we can then see that we've got, 4 nodes, 8 CPUs, total, 16 gigs. So, still not a massive cluster by any means, but, we're more or less good. And then we can actually try to go use this. So if we want to go ahead and go over to workloads, we can go ahead and click on deploy. Now again, this is not how you would normally do this for most people. You just do a kube control apply with the spec that you're going to be using, but this actually can sort of work as more or less a front end for you. So I'm going to go kind of just follow this. So we're going to go ahead and say existing container image. We can go use nginx latest. That seems fine. And then we can go ahead and have continue. And then we're going to go ahead and have our application name, nginx1, namespace default. That seems fine for me too. No need to go create a new namespace. We've got our labels already set up with a key here, right? So we can go create additional labels of, let's say, prod or env, let's say prod. And then we can go ahead and view the YAML file for this. So this is basically the deployment that's going to be set up for us. So yeah, works nicely. If you want to, you can just go save that off or close it out. And then we can go ahead and select the cluster that we want to go use, or we can even go create a new cluster for this, which is kind of interesting. We can sort of do it the reverse order to the way that you would normally kind of think about doing this. I'm going to go click on deploy. And at that point, it's going to go spin its wheels for a little bit. Create the deployment, right? So it needs to go generate the actual YAML file, and then it's going to go ahead and pass that to our cluster via the API server. And then we can go ahead and see that we've now, deployed this. We can go ahead and see the details of our, app. We can see our tags. We can go see, the replicas that we have. We can see that we've got an auto scaling. We have min replicas of 1, max replicas of 5 based on an 80% CPU. So, and look at the revision history. So we can see that we've only got 1. Now, of course, we don't have a service yet, right? So we could go ahead and create a service through here as well if we want to go do that. So we can go click on expose. We can say 8080. We have a load balance. Click on expose there. And this is going to not only set this up, but this is also going to take advantage of the fact that GKE has external load balancing services, which can be just directly connected to GKE. So we're going to go ahead and provision an external load balancer. It's going to go set up the service entry for you, and you're basically more or less be good to go. So now, of course, if this was an internal service, we wouldn't even need to do that. We could always just go back to our workload section and just get to it directly that way, right? Which would be fine. So, that's basically working with our workloads. We can go look at nginx. We can go look at the pod here, right? Look at the details. Get some actions we can go look at. So there's auto scale, there's expose. We can set up a rolling update. We can go look at the kube control, get the YAML for this as well. We can go look at the services and ingress. So we can go see that we've got nginx ingress that we can go look at. We can see that we've got this on cluster 1. We can see the load balancer that we're referencing. We can see the cluster IP address as well as the load balancer IP address. And in fact, we can just go click on that IP address and be able to see that, in fact, we are running nginx in our cluster. So pretty simple. Works really well, and it makes getting started with Kubernetes really easy. So I feel like a salesperson with this. I'm not. I don't get a commission. If you want to send me a commission, you're welcome to, but I don't get one. So that's a pretty simple kind of way to go do it. And if you haven't played around with Kubernetes yet, obviously it is a very in-demand skill. It's basically, it's a management layer, a management and orchestration layer on top of containers. And it does take a little bit to get used to, but it's not nearly as complicated as a lot of people sort of make it sound. The way that I think about it is, when I was a kid, like in high school, I was very torn between going to school for art or for going, for computer science and getting into tech. And I loved both quite a bit, and was doing art quite a bit. And in high school, we had art classes, and one of the things that they went over was perspective. So if you're not familiar with perspective, basically, it's a fairly straightforward idea. Let's see if I can find a diagramming application over here. Blow that away. And perspective is fairly simple. You've got a horizon line. You then go ahead and either do 1 point perspective or 2 point perspective, however you want to go do it. We'll say we'll do 1 point. So you go create a vanishing point. You then have all the lines sort of going to that origin point. And then you can go ahead and use that as a way to draw things in perspective. So if I wanted to have a building, for example, I have a straight line, and then now we have a building, and it's on a street. We can go up here. We can say we want to come out here, and then this guy's going to come out here. So that should map down there. And the idea is you can easily draw things in perspective. When I was first, in high school, when I was a kid, I thought perspective was a real hassle. Like, it was complicated, it was hard. And then I got to the point where I tried to draw things like buildings realistically freehand. And what I realized is that actually perspective seemed complicated initially, but it was solving a lot of problems for me. And in the end, it was actually making this significantly more simple to do and really, manageable. Kubernetes is very much the same way. So if you read the Google Site Reliability Engineering book, it's a really, really good resource, and it lays out a ton of different best practices. The people who made Kubernetes also worked at Google. So the idea is that they implemented a tool to make adhering to those best practices that they recommend in the Site Reliability Engineering book much easier, right? So using things like load balancers, trying to go get state out of your application, being able to go easily do things like microservices, using infrastructure as code, so you can go ahead and keep all of your environment state in something like Git and track revisions and all this kind of stuff. All the different kinds of things that they talk about in the SRE book, for the most part, are built directly into Kubernetes. So if you want to go do a rolling release or a canary release or a blue-green deployment, built into Kubernetes. So it's there to make it easier for you. On the surface, it looks more complicated, but it's really not. If you play around with it a little bit, you can pick it up really easily. But the thing about it is you got to play around with it, right? So this is a really good way to go do that. It's not going to cost you a huge amount of money because you're really only going to be doing this for a little while. Get your environment set up. You saw how easy it was. You also saw that we could go output commands and things like information about our deployment. So, for example, if I go back over here to, where was my document? Is this not it? Oh, that's one. Different tab. So we've got our service. I can go to kube control. I can say get YAML, right? And then we can go ahead and basically continue for Cloud Shell. This is going to go output our YAML for this service, right? So I can say return, authorize it, dumps out our YAML file. Call it nginx.service.yaml. Go over here to our workloads. Right, I can go ahead and click on nginx. Go to kube control, get YAML. I can say nginx -deployment .yaml. Oops. I'll put that nginx deployment.yaml, and then that's going to go ahead and create the YAML file for both my service and ingress as well as my workload. If I go to clusters, well, when we initially created this, it gave us the option on how to go set it up, right? So we can go ahead and recreate this fairly easily by going through and copying either the APIs or the gcloud commands to go create this, and we could basically write a little wrapper script to go create our cluster, authenticate, do kube control, apply -f for our nginx, workload, our deployment, and then our service, and basically recreate this environment really easily. So what that would allow you to go do is to basically have a lab environment that you could go use and spin it up when you need it, blow it away when you don't, and not be spending a huge amount of money with this. If you wanted something around a little bit more permanently, one of the things that you can go do is if we were to go ahead and say, we can do add a node pool here, right? We can say auto scale, and then where is it actually if we want to go to? Enable preemptible nodes. So you want to make sure that you've got enough nodes in your cluster to allow them for going down. But this is basically going to probably drop your cost for about like 80%, right? So even if you're running 3 nodes for a Kubernetes cluster, and you're, let me see. This is EC medium. Let's say we want to go do micros, right? So we want to go do something like this. We could go click on create. This is not going to be super expensive to have a node pool like this. Now it's probably better to go do this when you first actually just go create your cluster. But you can also go look at like the cost explorers that they have for you, so you can go ahead and look at like how much they expect this to go cost over the course of a certain period of time. And where is that? Yeah, I think it might need 24 hours before it actually has that. But we can go back to the dashboard, and I think it'll basically list out some of the stuff. So yeah, so this is the GKE dashboard. We can see that this is up and running. Has quite a bit of information we can kind of break down and kind of see. So we can see what pods are available and all that. So yeah, I don't want to go spend too much time on it, but it's a really nice environment for learning Kubernetes. This is one of the main ways that you would go deploy it if you're going to be doing it. It's either going to be on a cloud or it's going to be internal on top of VMs most of the time. So, you could do an equivalent in AWS or Azure, but I think in terms of cloud environments to go ahead and run, your Kubernetes stuff in. I mean, obviously Google is going to be up there because they were, effectively the people who came up with it. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now because I feel like I'm rambling. But thanks for watching. Hope this was useful, and take care.